The film takes place in New York City, across the boroughs of Manhattan and Brooklyn. In a tall building, we meet David King, a powerful music mogul at Stack & Hits Records, who is on a phone call. He regrets selling his majority share in the company and now wants to buy it back to stop a bigger label from taking over. After the call, David goes to see his wife, Pam, who talks to him about her own plans in the music business. As they talk, their son Trey gets ready for a basketball game at school with his friend Kyle, and King takes him there. On the way, King asks Trey how much time he spends on his phone each day. Trey admits that sometimes it can be up to 12 hours. When they arrive, Trey tells his dad about a new up-and-coming artist he thinks could sign with Stack & Hits. After dropping Trey off with the coach, King leaves without mentioning that he won't be staying to watch the game. Outside, he runs into Kyle's father and his personal driver, Paul, who hands him a financial documents and jokes around with him. After this, King goes to Stack & Hits, where he meets with one of his business partners, Patrick Bethia, to discuss a plan to buy back majority ownership. King believes the label trying to acquire them will only replace quality artists with AI-made music. Patrick, however, wants to use AI to create songs that could bring in huge profits, but King refuses. He doesn't believe that a machine can make music with soul. Instead, King offers to buy all of Patrick's shares in order to regain control of the company. Though Patrick objects at first, he eventually agrees to the deal. King returns home and shares the good news with Pam. She asks how he plans to raise the money to buy back Stack. King explains that he will use most of his personal assets as collateral, including their Dumbo penthouse and his collection of contemporary black art. Pam thinks the plan is too risky. She also reminds him that he had promised to slow down and spend more time with her, especially now that Trey is about to leave for college. Still, she vows to stand by her husband. Moments later, as the couple reminisces about the first time they met, King receives a phone call from a mysterious caller who tells him that Trey has been kidnapped. King shares the news with Paul and Pam and immediately calls the police to report Trey's kidnapping. The police quickly arrive at the King family's apartment. Detectives Higgins, Bell, and Bridges question King about Trey, especially whether the kidnapper gave him any instructions over the phone. King explains that the caller demanded he deposit 17.5 million Swiss francs in 1,000 franc notes. He also tells Bridges that the kidnapper will call again that night. Bridges reassures him that they will handle the case seriously and work to bring Trey back unharmed. Bridges then asks if King suspects anyone close to the family might be involved, but King says no. The detectives also question Paul and Trey's coach. The coach claims he doesn't know Trey's whereabouts, as the boy left school after the game. At home, Paul begins to panic because his son was also with Trey. He tries asking an officer about it, but the officer brushes him off while taking a phone call. Paul then speaks to King, explaining that he has called Kyle many times, but there's no answer. It feels like his own son is missing. Just then, Pam rushes in crying and tells them that the police have found Trey. The officers bring Trey home, and his parents embrace him. When Paul asks about Kyle, Detective Higgins informs them that the kidnapper made a mistake. Instead of taking Trey, they accidentally abducted Kyle. Paul breaks down and hurries inside the house. Trey then explains that he and Kyle had lunch together at camp, but afterward they split up. Trey went to a shop while Kyle stayed behind. When he came back, Kyle was gone. Just then, the kidnapper calls. King answers while the officers listen in. He demands that the kidnapper release Kyle or face the consequences. The kidnapper, who identifies himself as Felony, demands 17.5 million Swiss francs in exchange for Kyle's safe return. He also makes it clear that the plan was always to target King, no matter which boy was taken. Felony then abruptly hangs up. Paul, heartbroken over his son's kidnapping, goes to speak with King. He begs him to pay the 17.5 million ransom, promising that the police will recover the money later. King refuses, saying Paul has never even seen that much money in his life, and if the police fail to get it back, he cannot risk paying it. He explains that paying the ransom would jeopardize his deal to regain ownership of Stack. Paul pleads with him to help save his son, but King stays silent and walks away to meet Patrick. King tells Patrick that his own son is safe, but the kidnapper is still demanding money for Paul's son. If he pays, though, he won't have enough left to buy Patrick's shares, and he doesn't want to lose that chance. Patrick warns him that refusing to help Paul could damage both his company's reputation and his career. King then goes to see Trey, who warns him that if he doesn't pay the ransom for Paul's son, it could ruin their careers. Social media, newspapers, and Twitter would expose them, and Trey urges him to pay. After spending the night thinking it over, King finally decides to go ahead with the payment. Meanwhile, we see Kyle for the first time, tied to a bathtub, crying, while the song, "I Am Drunk," plays in the background. The next day, King gathers the ransom money and waits for the kidnapper's call. When the kidnapper phones, he tells King where to make the drop and also demands Pam's Cartier bracelet. King protests, saying it was their anniversary gift, but Pam gives it up without argument. With the detectives following, King packs the cash and jewelry into an Air Jordan backpack fitted with a GPS tracker. He then takes the subway from Borough Hall toward Yankee Stadium. When King arrives, the kidnapper calls again and instructs him to drop the bag between the train cars. Suddenly, one of the kidnapper's accomplices pulls the emergency brake, stopping the train abruptly and forcing King to drop the backpack. It falls onto the tracks, where another accomplice grabs it and passes it to a man on a scooter. Detectives chase the bag through the crowded streets, packed with people attending the Puerto Rican Day Parade. The chaos allows the criminals to keep switching bags and confuse the police. Eventually, Detective Higgins chases one of the crooks on foot and manages to catch him. But when he checks the bag, it's filled with junk. The ransom money is gone. Later, Kyle is found in a park and taken to the hospital. When police ask him where he was held, he says he doesn't remember the location. All he recalls is being tied to a bathtub with loud music playing in the background. Meanwhile, a video of King on the subway goes viral, and he is hailed as a hero, nicknamed the Black Panther of the Boogie Down Bronx, for helping to get Kyle back. However, King soon hears troubling news from one of his lenders, Gabe. Gabe informs him that his actions have caused the ownership deal to collapse, as investors now believe King doesn't have the money to follow through. Worse, they suspect him of fraud since he had pledged his assets for the deal, but instead used the funds to pay the ransom. Gabe gives him 2 weeks to come up with the money before the investors walk away for good. That evening, King listens to a rap song while walking across a New York bridge. He remembers Kyle describing the same track as playing during his captivity. King rushes to the hospital and plays the song for Kyle and the detectives, and Kyle confirms it is the exact song he heard while being held. The track is by a rapper named Young Felon, and King realizes he must be the kidnapper. King tries to convince the detectives that the voice on the ransom call is the same as the one in the song, but they dismiss his claim, suggesting it could have been AI generated. Frustrated that the police won't investigate, King and Paul arm themselves and track down Young Felon's address to recover the ransom money. At Felon's apartment, King doesn't find him, but instead meets Felon's wife, Rosa, and their young son. Rosa recognizes King immediately and invites him inside. Pretending to be interested in signing Felon to stack in hits after hearing his demo, King gains Rosa's trust. She reveals the location of the recording studio where Felon is currently working. With this information, King and Paul head out to confront him. King and Paul arrive at the studio, where King goes in alone to confront Felon. Inside, Felon is in the middle of recording and doesn't notice King at first. When King turns off the track, he demands to know where his money is. He explains that he once idolized King but could never get his attention until the kidnapping forced it. Their argument turns into a heated rap battle, ending with Felon pulling a gun and firing at King, who narrowly escapes. Paul tries to stop Felon but is shot and injured. King chases Felon into the streets and down into the subway. The two brawl between train cars until King gains the upper hand and knocks him out. Police arrive, arrest Felon, and later recover the stolen ransom money from his home. Afterward, King, Pam, and Trey visit Paul in the hospital, where he is recovering from his injury. Grateful, King offers Paul a role in his new label, but Paul declines, saying it's time for him and Kyle to move forward and start fresh. Meanwhile, Young Felon becomes the most streamed rapper in the country, his notoriety turning him into a cultural phenomenon. Crowds even protest for his release. Eventually, Felon accepts a plea deal, 25 years in prison, in exchange for one last meeting with King. When King visits him in his cell, Felon tries to persuade him to sign him to Stackin' Hits, claiming their partnership could be hugely profitable. But King refuses, explaining that he is leaving Stackin' Hits behind to start a smaller, more personal label. Enraged, Felon curses King as he walks away. Back at home, the King family meets with a young artist named Sula, whom Trey had recommended. They listen to her song, Highest to Lowest, and are moved by her powerful voice. King asks if she is ready to face all the challenges that come with the music business. When she answers yes, King smiles and says, "Then it's time to get to work." In this way, movie ends here. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more interesting movie recaps.